Okay. Yep. Okay, good afternoon. I'd like to call the Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 Moorhead Public Service Commission meeting to order. I'd like to take a roll call, make sure everybody's here.
Is your mic on?
My mic is on.
Okay.
Yep. Christine Thompson here. Mary Daly. Okay, Mary's not here. Sebastian?
Here.
Heidi Durand?
Here.
Joel Paulson.
Here.
Joining us, City Council Representative Chuck Hendrickson.
Here, can you hear me?
I can, thank you. And Deb White?
Here.
Thank you. The Moorhead Public Service Commission welcomes and encourages customer input on issues listed on the agenda or of general water and or electric utility interest, time and commission permitting. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations. Customers wishing to address the commission regarding a specific agenda item will be afforded an opportunity during the discussion of that item. Customers wishing to speak on matters not listed on the agenda will be given opportunity to do so under the customers to be heard and or recognitions. Each person requesting the opportunity to speak is asked to fill out a request to speak form. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, we have an agenda. Now I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make the motion.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay,
Sebastian and Heidi.
I'm
Duran.
sorry. Sorry, I'll be more. We assented to that, so we now have an approved consent agenda. Customers to be heard, we do have one customer to be heard, Mr. Mark Hansen. I believe he's joined us. Mr. Hansen?
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. As requested, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Don't have a timer here, so I'm going to use my phone if that's okay with you. Okay, you can go ahead and start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, Mark Hansen, 1005 36th Avenue South down in Moorhead. Just wanted to address the Public Service Commission and make you aware of my interest in the general manager position. I've been following that since Bill resigned in January. Had met with Christina Volker and Dan Molly, had talked briefly with Mayor Judd, and just hadn't had a chance to express my interest in the position. When I saw that you had hired Baker Lilly to do the internal search, I thought, well, maybe I should do a quick request to speak and at least let my interest be known in case the position was never opened up to the public. And so that was really my intent today. I've got, just a real short time here, but about 10 years utility experience in an executive position. In the last 10 years, I've been working with utilities across the nation in their energy efficiency program. I think I could do, would be honored to be considered for that position if in fact it is considered publicly. And just wanted to make sure the commission knew that, introduce myself. And that's all I have at this time, unless anyone has any questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your introducing yourself, Mr. Hansen, and we always like to hear from our ratepayers and the people in the community. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other customers to be heard today? No, I don't have any more requests to speak forms, so I guess that's a no. Any recognitions, Mr. Schmidt?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any old business? Hearing none, move on to reports. This would be time when the city council could make their report.
So I'm on?
Yes, you are, Chuck.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. With our city council, we went over a comprehensive annual financial report and audit presentation, which took a lot of the meeting, and was heard about the financials that are going on in Moorhead right now. And then we also, which was on consent, we approved a contract with Western Area Power Administration, the contract for administrative services with the Missouri River Energy Services and the city of Moorhead. So we did pass that, and that was on, like I said, on consent. Other than that, we're quiet. So unless Heidi, do you have anything to add?
No, I would agree. Things are quiet, but that's okay.
We are, like I said, we're going through a city manager search, just like we're going through an executive director search with MPS. So that's still prevalent and one of our top priorities. So other than that, we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to add, Deb? Okay. Any reports from the Public Service Commission? I don't think there's been any. Yes?
Madam Chair, if I could just ask Councilmember Hendrickson, is there a schedule for the city manager search as far as when you would be taking applicants and going through a process?
Yeah, I think it has been posted, Joel. And, we're in the process of gathering applications. We did form a screening committee, and, we're going to screen through all the applicants. But right now, we did post it, and we're looking for applications. I don't know a closing date on that. I don't know if Heidi or Deb have any information on that. But we're just starting the process right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
No, I believe it's the end of September, right? It's open until that time.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure of the dates, but yeah, that sounds right.
But it is posted on the city webpage.
Yep.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
do you want the record to reflect that Mary Daly is online?
Oh, okay. I would like the record to reflect that Mary Daly is online.
Yeah, I've been here. I've just been hiding.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't see you.
It's okay.
So, manager's report.
Sure. A couple items on there. I'm going to have Mark Moylan come up and speak about the COVID financials a little bit, give another update as we have been doing over the past few months, just a monthly update on what the numbers are reflecting. So, Mark, if you want to come up and speak to what we've got going on.
Mark Moylan, Controller.
Oh, check your mic.
Mark Moylan and Controller, Moorhead Public Service. As Travis alluded, for the last couple of months, we've been monitoring our consumption and sales data, as well as our collections and receivables, just to see how we're doing with the situation that's at hand. As in the prior 2 months, we've noticed again that electric residential consumption is way up. Our general service and small general service, which is our business and industrial, that's down a bit compared to last year. This is consistent between both electric and water. On a dollar basis, though, we're doing pretty good. We were about 5% under budget at the end of February on the electric side in terms of sales. We had a relatively mild January and February. We're still running about 5 to 6% under budget. So with the mix switching, we haven't seen an impact really on our financials on either the electric or water side. In terms of receivables, we are still monitoring those. We're still running about 15 to 16% at past due, where they have at least one past due month's worth of bills. One thing that is kind of concerning is we're still continuing to monitor and see about 1,000 accounts now that have at least 3 months' worth of total bill outstanding and unpaid. Some of these have grown to actually be about 8 or 9 months if you go back to the last time that a payment may have been made and the cold weather rule coverage started in November or October of last year. So we do have quite a few accounts that we'll have to look at. Again, what we're waiting for is when we're going to determine when we're going to possibly do electric disconnections to require customers to come current on their electric bills, as well as make arrangements or see what we can do to make payment plans so that they can spread these unpaid balances out over what's a reasonable period of time. That's still, as we said, in flux as we're waiting for the emergency orders to expire and then determine what the next plan of action would be.
Mark,
Yes.
this is Heidi. I have a couple questions about that. You said we have a number of residents who have outstanding bills. How much higher is that compared to, say, this time last year? Do we have a comparison so we know what is maybe COVID related and what's not COVID related?
The percentage of customers with past due bills has remained relatively constant. What we're seeing, though, is those that are past due or delinquent, the number that are ceasing to pay anything towards even like a current month, that's what's growing. Their balances are growing, but the quantity of customers is still remaining relatively consistent. So again, with the removal of like the threat of disconnection, some have not made payments at all, so I'm not sure what's going on with that. We've been referring those that have expressed interest or, willingness to make some kind of payments. We've referred them to our West Central Community Actions, but their office has recently closed, so they'll be done with their assistance for the 2019-2020 season. That won't ramp up again until October, November, when they'll begin accepting new applications. What we have done, though, is reached out to Lakes and Prairies. They do have some funds available. They're hoping to receive more, but again, as with everything, they're waiting for, what's the next governmental action to be. But they are hoping that they'll have some more funds available. They're more than willing to accept applicants from customers to get them in the queue at least. So we are referring customers that direction. They, in turn, work with a number of sub-agencies, so it makes things easy on our point. We really just have West Central that we kind of work with, and then Lakes and Prairies, and then they funnel downwards to the churches and other assistance vehicles.
Do we have staff that are making phone calls to these individuals, or are we just relying on paper mail? At
this time, we're still relying on the paper mail. I'm not sure what the consistent message could be other than, they're continuing to get their bills, they're continuing to have cutoff notices on, but as we've stated, publicly, we're not doing disconnections. Those cutoff orders were, cutoff notices actually helped them get assistance with the assistant agencies, so we kept those on. We did cease late payment or late charges. We aren't disconnecting any services, so we're really waiting for the next step as to when are we going to do that, and then how long do we want to roll out a communication effort to get people to make an arrangement or possibly convert their outstanding balance into a loan or something and spread it over 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I think we should, for some of them serious delinquent accounts, I think phone calls should be made. I think it's about, if you're 8 months past due, I think that warrants some phone calls. And you mentioned like a small loan and a payment plan. Do we have that set up yet, or how does that work? Dave Anderson and I had talked about coming up with a pool of money that could be used for small loans, and then the applicant or the person pays back to that pool of money that is set aside by MPS. Have we done anything more with that, or is that what you're envisioning, or what are your thoughts on that type of a?
Okay, it's kind of two different ideas. One is you're talking about an additional source of outside funds coming that could be used to pay off those bills. What I'm envisioning at this time is an internal creation of a loan, taking that past due balance,
Right, that's what I thought.
turning it into an internal loan, there'd still be a debt owed to Moorhead Public Service and the city of Moorhead, each for their respective portions, but we would split that current outstanding balance, which could be $500 to $600, spread it out over 6 to 12 months, which would basically add $50, $60 to their current bill so that it wouldn't seem as overwhelming.
Exactly. That's what I was hoping that we would see, and that would be, no interest and no fees, I would assume. And then are we also not applying re-hookup fees? Is that a fee that we discontinued as well?
Yes, we aren't disconnecting any services at this time, so there aren't any additional fees being assessed.
When we start to disconnect, is that a fee that we are no longer charging? Because I know that we had gotten rid of a bunch of fees. I'm hoping that that's one that we have gotten rid of.
We have phased it, I'll put it that way. If a customer is disconnected for the first time, we have waived it, we will defer it and not charge it. If a customer is disconnected a second time, we reduced it, we'll do a $35 call-out fee. But the first time they're disconnected, there wouldn't be a fee. But again, our goal, I think, would be we don't want disconnections to occur. We want to work with the customers to make payment arrangements of some sort so that they recognize that this obligation still exists, it still needs to be paid. You did utilize the city and MPS services, so it's a valid, quote, debt. And we just want to make sure that we can make it as manageable as possible in light of situations.
I definitely like that attitude, being proactive versus reactive. But if this is an option that's out there for our very serious delinquent accounts, I really think that we need to start communicating with these individuals over the phone and explaining that this loan could be an option, and that definitely is something most residents probably are unaware of, that's even an option. So I think phone calls are warranted and that information needs to be spread. Yeah, but I'm pleased with the progress in that regard.
Yeah, I think, Heidi, this is Travis. I think we got to look at it from a legal perspective too, and just confirm that that's something that we can do as well. So that's probably the one thing we need to work on yet to make sure that that's possible. From the standpoint of the phone calls, I think we should first make those phone calls and try to get them to utilize the assistance agencies before we go to the loan portion as well.
Sure.
So I think we got a few steps that we need to work on to make sure that this is a little bit more valid of a process.
Yeah. Well, I would like to see that because, like I said, it's something we've been thinking about and talking about for a long time. We've seen similar situations down in other parts of the state where people do genuinely want to pay their bills, but sometimes the size, the massive scale of the debt they owe is overwhelming, and they just don't know where to start. So, having those options available, I think, would be a good thing, and I don't think we're going to be taking advantage of in any sense. So, I look forward to there being a more laid out plan and a more laid out process, and I look forward, to seeing that come back to us soon, hopefully.
Okay. With that, I have to talk with Travis. We have to look at our timing, and we're waiting again to see, will the emergency declaration be extended another 30 days? It's been extended 3 times, I think, so far, and we thought it would expire July 13. It was extended now to August, and then we've got to figure out, how long do we want to go out to allow communications to our customers and allow them time before these disconnections occur. We would probably do more communications than we've done in the past just because we are in, a special time of circumstances.
Have we heard anything from the federal level on the next CARES Act, if there would potentially be any relief for municipal utilities? in the sense that, I don't imagine we're the only utility that is experiencing this. It'd be interesting to see if there was any talk about relief for utilities, in this, due to customers not being able to pay their bills.
Yes, Heidi, there is some communication, or there's been some talk of that. Nothing's been really finalized, or really, there's no plan or anything on what's going to happen and how it's going to occur. As soon as we have more information on that, we can bring that back as well, too.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Travis and Mark, hi, this is Mary. Quick question, probably directed at Travis. Could you instruct or ask legal to take a look at that to see if we can do an internal loan? Have them start taking a look at it, what it could look like, what are the boundaries, that kind of thing, because I think that Heidi made some very valid points that with some of these people, the enormity of the bill is going to be quite overwhelming. And if we could even let them know, we got some things in place. You aren't going to have to come up with the whole thing all at once. And I think that very valid also to start thinking about, okay, when the emergency is lifted, how far out do we want to go before shutoffs begin? And I don't think we need to look at shutoffs for people who are genuinely making an effort and got involved in the loans or whatever, but for the ones who have just completely blown it off, that might be a consideration. How far out do we want to go
Correct.
With that?
Yeah, the conversation piece that we had with the city staff as well was it was probably going to be a 45-plus day notice before we would do any type of disconnections, even 60 days. And that's changing as well, too. We're hearing a lot of things from the state. They're even talking, if I remember, Mark, I think you stated 90 days was something they were looking at, asking utilities to look at before doing disconnections.
And I think that's reasonable, especially for those who are so far behind, because I'm sure some of it is quite overwhelming to a number of them, of people. And so, but just to keep that into consideration, but I would agree that I think we possibly could start reaching out and saying, hey, there's things available. If you owe for the past whatever, you would need to start taking a look at this, because we want to work with you. And I think that's a very important point to make, is we want to work with you. We're not going to come in and shut your electricity or water, whatever, off.
Correct. Okay, we'll talk with legal on that, and we'll go from there.
Do we
Madam
have?
Chair? I'll just add, I just found a link online, and there's information that the federal government has out there with the CARES Act of how you can get funding in for individuals and businesses to help with utility bills. And even if I agree with Commissioner Durand that, talking to people directly, but I wonder if that information could even be printed on some of the billing. And so it's readily available that people could see that there are other sources out there that they could find for support if they're having difficulty paying their utility bills. And I'll add that link in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Deb, the one thing on that, there's a lot of technicalities with that, so we got to be very careful. So I know city staff we've been talking about this in the COVID team meeting. Yeah, there's a lot of technical sides to that, so we'll keep you guys updated on that, but we'll work with city staff some more to make sure we've got everything cleared up on the CARES Act funding.
I was going to add that I think do we have the personnel to start making those phone calls? Are we short-staffed, or?
Staffing is fine. It's just what is the plan? And Travis and I haven't had a chance to talk about the plan. I mean, we have a very robust automatic phone call system that would probably be the first step to take, would be to at least reach out and encourage them to call, because we've ceased doing our reminder phone calls, which was a standard practice up until we ceased doing disconnections. Customers would get a call, 3 to 5 days before scheduled disconnections with a reminder saying your bill is past due, you need to make a payment on or before this date. Those stopped at that time, and we just haven't reinstated them because the the emergency order just keeps getting extended further and further, so we don't really want to, unduly frighten somebody by saying we may disconnect, we could modify the language. Hey, just a reminder, we've noticed that your bill appears to be, significantly delinquent. I've got to talk with Travis on what kind of language we want to use and when do we want to start rolling those out. But again, everything seems to get moved back. We'd planned on starting this in June and then in July, and now we've got the emergency order extended now to August 13. So it's like, when do we really want to start without jumping the gun?
Thank you, Mark.
You're
Any other
welcome.
questions for Mark? Thanks.
Okay. Next part of the general or the manager's report is I'll have Mark Pritchard come up. He's going to speak on our second presentation on the wellhead protection and the Buffalo wells that we were talking about at the last meeting. So I'll let him do his next phase of that. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, thank you, Travis. Mark Pritchard, Water Plant Supervisor. This is part 2 of a 2-part series that was just mentioned, going over well use changes over the past few years, as well as conversations that Moorhead Public Service has had with the Department of Natural Resources regarding those changes. So we can start diving right in. For an overview, the things that I wanted to go over was the Moorhead water supply, long-term planning that we have, future options for additional supply, and then most recently the discussions with the DNR from May 28th onward this year based on the changes to the historical use within our Buffalo aquifer system. So to get things started off, I thought it would be prudent to go over the general flow of our current water treatment system here at Moorhead Public Service. Our process flow diagram here that you can see shows the treatment process including softening, which is that first station on the left where we have groundwater and surface water combined in our softening basin, where we remove most of the hardness that we have from our raw water sources. This is also where most of our cost is input as far as chemical use. After that, we have our ozone disinfection, where you can see in cells A through F. That's where we get our primary disinfection with our ozone. After which, we have our anthracite, which has been recently converted to a granular activated carbon filter media for removal of turbidity constituents. And then we have chloramines as our secondary disinfectant that prevents biological regrowth in our system. So that's kind of a brief overview of our treatment process. This chart here shows where our water supply comes from. This shows 3 locations. One, we'll kind of start on the west side and work our way east, or work left to right. You can see on the left on the bottom there we have our Red River intake. That's where our surface water source comes from. Moving further to the east, we have our Moorhead wells. We have 2 well pumps along this aquifer. It's a fully confined aquifer. And then further to the east along Highway 10 and then a bit to the north, we have 2 Buffalo aquifer well fields, and that's where the majority of our discussion will take place. Before we dive into the specifics on usage, I wanted to make sure that it was clearly understood about how much potential water we can use from each source. And this chart that you see before you now shows authorized use, our current pumping capacity, and then some recent trends through 2015, and then how that has changed since we have noticed some source water chemistry degradation in the surface water source. So as you can see, starting on the left-hand side, we have the South Buffalo well fields. That's where a majority of our discussion will take place. We do have 730 million gallons per year of allocated usage. Historically, we've used approximately 130 to 150 million gallons annually, and since we have noticed the changes in the surface water chemistry, we have gone up from approximately 130 to 150 million gallons per year up to about 245 million gallons per year, so it's a significant increase. For the North Buffalo wells, you can see the usage has stayed relatively the same. The reason for that is those wells have a little bit harder water, naturally occurring hard water inside those portions of the aquifer, so we use them less frequently for blending purposes. And then for the Moorhead wells, you can see that has a quite low allocation in reference to the other authorized uses. We have 225 million gallons of annual usage available to us. The reason why you see that is such a low number on an annual basis is because they have temperature threshold regulations that we need to abide by to make sure that we don't have any unwanted chemical byproducts form in our treatment process. So we only use those wells during low temperature situations, typically in the winter, spring, and fall. The surface water sources that you see, the Red River and the Buffalo River, they both have very high allocated usages. That is to make sure that we can utilize the full potential of our 10 million gallon per day water treatment plant. So for a total overview, we have a total capacity right now to pump about 12.8 million gallons per day. Firm capacity, meaning with our largest single pump out of service, we can pump about 10.5 million gallons per day. So we have firm capacity to pump our needs for the uses of our customers now and into the future. And the big driving factor between what source we use at what time is really based on efficiency of operations and keeping our costs as efficient as we can. So our water supply utilization historically has been about 80% surface water to 20% groundwater. In the groundwater source delineation, the Buffalo Aquifer has historically supplied about 16 to 17% of our total flows. Since we have noticed the surface water degradation, it has gone up approximately 10% to 25.5% of our total allocated usage. So there's been a significant increase in our total Buffalo Aquifer use. And we'll see that in some of the prevailing slides. The Moorhead Aquifer, it's still a relatively small allotment of our total usage. It goes about 4 to 5% on an annual basis. That has gone up about 90% to about 8.5% total percent of our total flows. So the reason why we track these usages so closely is because we want to be as sustainable as we can be and be good stewards of our groundwater resources. They are something that you cannot simply recharge overnight. It does take a significant amount of time to have any kind of measurable recharge. And we want to make sure that if we ever have any dry days to come, we want to make sure that we have enough groundwater sources available to get us through those days. So this graph that we have here is from one of our DNR observation wells that was along our South Buffalo well field. This well field has been in activity since about 1947, and it was just recently retired at the beginning of 2019, so it had a very long usage. And you can see over time that we had depleted to some extent the South Buffalo regions of the aquifer, and then when we had the new surface water plant implemented in the mid-1990s, you can see that level began to increase. That was because we went from about 60% total surface water up to about 80 to 85% annual surface water usage until very recently. That's why you can see that trend graph increase. Then when we saw the surface water degradations begin to hit Moorhead Public Service quite hard, we ended up using additional well water to blend some of those chemical constituents out. You can see that trend line go back down. And then when we recognized that we needed to change up our game plan a little bit to spread that usage out over a wider area, you can see that the Buffalo Aquifer began to recover and go back up yet again. So prior to our discussions with the DNR this spring, we did recognize these trends, and we were actively implementing some strategies on an operational day-to-day basis to make sure that we are being as efficient as we can be with the resources that we have available, and that we're being effective stewards for drought preparedness with those resources.
Mark, I have a question if I can real quick.
Yeah.
When you say an aquifer has been retired, what exactly does that mean? That doesn't mean that we tapped it and it's empty, I hope, or can you explain what exactly that means?
Are you referencing the observation well?
I don't know. All I heard, I was looking at numbers and pie pieces, and you said something about an aquifer was retired.
Oh, yes, that was actually an observation well that the DNR had in place since about 1947. Okay. Over time, due to deterioration of the casing compounds, the screens, some of the analytical equipment inside those observation wells, they simply wear out over time. At the end of 2018 into 2019, the DNR contacted MPS requesting that they basically drill a new observation well next to the old one to continue its usage. It ended up being approximately 300 feet to the east of this old observation well. And the reason why they wanted to implement that new observation well was to continue to track Buffalo Aquifer levels over time. So as the casing wore out, as the components wore out, they wanted to replace it with a new one.
I see. So it's just monitoring, an observation well just monitors levels.
Correct, yes.
Oh,
Yep,
all right, thank you.
no actual pumping takes place. It's simply level observation.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep, good question. This graph that we have here from Legat, Bradshars, and Graham basically shows what happens when you have a pump system in an aquifer. This is a cutout of the Buffalo Aquifer. If you think about it being cut like a piece of cake, if you cut it vertically and then you look at it from the side, this is on a north-south axis. So you can see that this aquifer is roughly shaped like a diamond. And as you can see on the charts, the water on the left chart flows right to left or east to west downhill towards the Red River. And in a natural state that is called a state of non-pumping conditions, you can see that blue line above being the groundwater level being at a pretty constant rate. On the right-hand side, it shows what happens when a aquifer system is under pumping conditions. And what happens is the pump basically sucks the water into the screen at the bottom, and then through pressure of the pump, it pumps it to our system for treatment. You can see at the top there is what we call a cone of depression that has water being sucked towards the pump, and it shows that that level decreases during that time. If you have continued usage of a pump without really giving it a break, you'll gradually start to see that the area around that cone of influence begins to decrease as you use up more and more water. That's one of the things that MPS tries to optimize on an operational basis to make sure that we're not using a single pump for too long and increasing that cone of influence further than it needs to be. It's part of us being as sustainable with the resource as we can be. So basically, what's the reason for all of this tracking? What's the reason for keeping all of this data? Well, it's for drought preparedness and making sure that when we need groundwater resources, we have it available. The whole reason for making our Buffalo Aquifer Management Plan was to be prepared for a 1930-style drought. And on this chart, it shows the PDSI, which is a drought indicator that is tracked on a national basis. It shows red where things are exceptionally dry and blue where things are exceptionally wet. And you can see from about 1992, 1993 onward, we've been in the middle of a historic historic wet spell. That's great for aquifer recharge, and we want to make sure that we can maximize that storage available so that when we see something in the red, similar to what we see back in the 1930s, we have that groundwater resource available for our use. So this is the whole reason why we track all these things to the extent that we do, is to make sure that when those dry days come, we have resources available to get us through. This is a chart that we have that's a little bit confusing when you look at it, but kind of bear with me here. Let's start at the top half. You can see that we have three different lines. We have our total withdrawals on the top in black. We have our surface water or the river water, that middle kind of dark blue line, and then that light blue line shows our total groundwater usage. Take that groundwater usage and transplant it to the bottom graph. You can see in the dotted line it shows the total usage again. And then we broke it up by well field to see usage over time based on when we began pumping from each source. And you can see that at about 1994, 1995, when the surface water treatment plant was put in service, that corresponding decrease in the overall groundwater use is very evident going up till about 2012. You can see that first red arrow there showing the increase in overall groundwater use. That's when we built our new river pump station. And then that second increase that we've seen in 2016, 17, and 18 shows the increase in groundwater use due to the degradation of the surface water source. And that's where we'll kind of dive into some more data here. This is a close-up of that total well field production. This is all of our current well fields that we have available in our raw water network. You can see that in the previous 3 years, 2017, 18, and 19, we actually crossed the threshold of the pre-new plant average use, if that makes any sense. So basically, before we had our surface water treatment plant, that was the usage on an annual basis of the old system that we had. We built the surface water plant to maximize surface water use to save that groundwater, and in the past few years, we ended up using a lot more than we had thought we were going to. At the end of 2018 and into 2019, we were able to decrease that usage a little bit. So far this year, we did make some operational changes, and you can see the decrease representing that. So we have made a few changes to try to spread out that usage and use less overall groundwater. This graph here shows projections through the end of the year. If everything stays exactly as it is right now, we'll be looking at about a 10.5% overall decrease in well water usage. So that's a very good trend to have given the past few years. This graph here shows a stacked bar graph for annual reportable data that we send to the DNR through their MPS system. If we start over on the left, you can see wells 6 and 6B and then the Moorhead total. We'll start over on the left-hand side. That is our Moorhead aquifer system. You can see overall, well 6 and 6B don't get a whole lot of usage. Again, the reason for that is because we have some constraints on when we can use it based on river temperature. We don't want to have any unnecessary byproducts from our disinfection process, so that's why we use those pretty infrequently. Wells 8 and 9 to the right, you can see that they have some pretty big color bars during the years 2017, 18, and 19, and that corresponds again with that increase in groundwater use due to the degradation of the surface water source. And as we kind of work our way to the right, you can see that the North Buffalo aquifer well field, it has significant usage over time, but it is still less than that South Buffalo well field. So this is a really good representation to see how much total water we use over time. So far, since about 2009, we're a little bit north of 2 billion gallons from our South Buffalo well field, and about 140 or so billion, or 1.4 billion gallons rather, from the North Buffalo well field. So there's some heavy usage at times, but again, going into 2020, we can see that that top orange chart that has much smaller total areas showing that we have decreased usage, which is, again, a good trend for us to have. This is another way to represent that same data. You can see that purple bar graph over on the right-hand side, well number 9 specifically, is where we had the bulk of our extra usage. Once we had the 2017 data compiled, we really saw that we needed to spread that usage out. And you can see in the following years, 18, 19, and into 2020, we were able to really spread that usage out over all of our available resources and really minimize the effects on each individual well field. So that's, again, a really good trend from a sustainability standpoint, because the further you can spread out the usage, the less potential damage you can have to a well from overpumping. So the more you can spread it out, the better. So this dives into the DNR discussions. I know that was kind of a pretty long prelude, but I wanted to make sure that we saw some historical trends and how they changed. So earlier this year, in May, we had some initial conversations with the Department of Natural Resources regarding our groundwater use changes due to the topics that we had just covered. When we created the Buffalo Aquifer Management Plan, we actually did forward the proceeds of that plan's development to the DNR for further study, and they were able to actually run some models based on our 2017 year, which was our highest groundwater use year, to see how it would affect the Buffalo Aquifer if we were to pump at that rate for a long period of time. With that data, they were able to run some additional scenarios, and then they were able to actually help us pinpoint where the most highly recommended bandwidth of usage would be to make sure that we can be as sustainable as possible with that resource and cover all of our needs. So this is one of the charts that is very simple but yet very useful for depicting that best bandwidth of use, if I could use that term. Historically, we've used about 130 million gallons annually from our groundwater sources. The DNR modeled the historic water level range based on 200 million gallons per year from each well field on the Buffalo Aquifer, as well as 400 million gallons. And you can see based on this North Buffalo well field, if we were to pump a consistent 200 million gallons annually, we'll stay right in that bottom third to the bottom quarter of the historic level that has been monitored in that portion of the aquifer. So that's right where we kind of want to be. If we pump 400 million gallons per year, we go below or beneath that historic range to a point that we haven't really seen before. And the DNR wanted to convey that information to us in an effort to, put it on our radar to make sure that we spread that usage out to, again, be as sustainable as we can be with this resource. So this chart here shows basically MPS's report card, if we could call it that, based on the North Buffalo well field. You can see that black dotted line is that 200 million gallon annual average, and historically we have been well beneath that, so we've been doing quite well. In the past few years, 2016, 17, 18, and 19, we had a steady increase in usage. And then in 2020, due to some operational changes, you can see how little water we've actually pumped from that resource. So 2020 is a good year so far for the North Buffalo well field. We've had very little need of using it at this time. This graph here shows the same 200 million gallon annual average modeled use, as well as the 400 million gallon per year annual use modeled by the DNR. This shows that if we were to pump 200 million gallons from our South Buffalo well field, we're smack dab in the middle of that historic level, which is right where we really want to be from a sustainability and a drought preparedness standpoint. And if we were to pump 400 million gallons annually from that resource, we still would be within its historic range that we have recorded in the past. So we have some higher availability from a sustainability standpoint of pumping this portion of the aquifer. For the South Buffalo well field historic use, you can see that after 2016, we went above that 200 million gallon annual use a couple years consecutively until 2020. 2017, again, was our highest use year due to the surface water degradation. And you can see that after recognizing that trend, we were able to spread the usage out. And you can see 2018, 2019, 2020, those gallons of use were spread out to our other available sources, and it really decreased that overall use of this specific portion of the aquifer. So, bringing it all together, if we want to use 200 million gallons as our recommended point of use for each aquifer portion, if we combine those two to 400 million gallons, this is where we sit for our total Buffalo aquifer use. And you can see that all years except for 2017 and 2012, when we had some construction back in 2012, we have been at, or really close to at, or below that recommended usage. So overall, MPS is doing really well, making sure that, again, we're being as sustainable as we can be with this resource. And you can see again in 2020 how little usage we've had thus far. So again, it's a good year so far for groundwater use. So how does this tie all in with the Sabin well field? We've talked about that a few times over the past several months about the potential of expanding our groundwater use along the southern portions of the Buffalo aquifer. Again, it would be to increase the total number of wells available to spread that usage out over a larger area so that individual areas do not get impacted as harshly from increased pumping. Another reason why this would still be a good project for us to pursue when the time comes, from a drought preparedness standpoint, if we were to add one additional well field, we'd be able to pump approximately 6.5 million gallons a day for a 10-year span based on this current usage and the current volume of stored water within the aquifer. So MPS and the City of Moorhead and the City of Dilworth are very fortunate that we have this wide variety of source waters available to us. And again, it's our duty to make sure that we are as sustainable as possible in the good years so that when it gets dry, we have enough water to see us through. So what's driving this change? We're coming to the conclusion of the presentation here, just a few slides left, so bear with me. So what's driving this change of increased well use and decreased surface water use at Moorhead Water Treatment Plant? And it boils down to chemistry of the source waters of specifically the Red River. We can go ahead to the next one. Yep. All right, so this graph has a lot of data packed into it. Kind of bear with me here. This is showing Moorhead Public Service's total hardness records and total non-carbonate based hardness records going from about January of 2011 up to present day. And you can see that it has a lot of variation. There's some years where it goes high, some years where it goes low. But one of the consistent trends is they are both going up over time. If you look at about midway through the chart, about mid-2016, that's when things really start to change for the worse, actually, as far as a chemistry perspective goes. You can see that the variation from about mid-2016 on, it increases in its variability and its maximum levels that we've experienced, meaning that it's becoming more difficult to treat and it takes more chemicals and more cost to do so in an effective manner. And then from a peak monthly chemical cost perspective, I thought this would be a good chart to show. It picks the highest single month from each year and the cost associated on a per million gallon basis. So as you can see, from November 2010 through the end of 2019, we have some data that shows the peak month for the highest individual month's cost on a per million gallon basis. And for reference, on a good month, we're sitting right at about that $400 mark. So we're kind of about a third of the way down the chart. And as the chart progresses, you can see that it, again, trends upwards over time. Portions of that is due to increases in chemical costs themselves from the suppliers, but a big portion of it is our increased usage due to, again, the increase in the total hardness and the non-carbonate-based hardness in the Red River. In June 2019, that was our highest year ever. We peaked out in June at just shy of $955 per million gallons. And that's on a daily basis, so it can get quite expensive when the water gets that hard. This graph here is from another utility that uses the Red River as its surface water source or part of its raw water network. They were gracious enough to send us data all the way back to January of 1998. And this one's a little bit easier to see the variability from 2016 onward. The left 2/3 of this chart looks relatively stable until you get to, again, about 2016 or 2017. And then you can see the variability in both the total hardness and the non-carbonate hardness begin to increase considerably. So we're not the only surface water utility experiencing these effects or the costs that are a side effect of it. So some unexpected fruits from all these discussions. This is my last slide, so we're getting to the end here. One of the unexpected fruits of all these conversations about water quality degradation in the river is the Department of Natural Resources has forwarded the information that we presented to them to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And they are currently deciding whether or not or how they can begin to do a root cause analysis for these chemistry changes. It's much cheaper to try to get this stuff at the source than try to treat it with individual treatment plants down the line. So this is just a little bit of the data that I was able to forward to my compadres over at the DNR. It basically looks at the data from 2011 until present day. And the first 5 years of that trend that we saw here a few moments ago, our total occurrences, the total individual measurements above a 500 million part per million total hardness is about 868. So in comparison, the last few years, that has roughly tripled. For non-carbonate-based hardness, we used to see about 350 as our threshold of, a high reading. That went from about 250 individual measurements up to about 1,300, so about a factor of 5. So again, it's another way to represent that the hardness is changing and it is increasing, and it's increasing cost and increasing the challenges associated with treating this water. One of the more significant things that I was able to find doing the data analysis was on this bottom section here for the average non-carbonate hardness 2016 through 2020. It has increased just shy of 50%. And that is the biggest single driver of our chemical cost increase at the plant. And it is the single biggest driver of the overall increase in cost of treating our water. So if we can find the root source to where that 50% or so increase in hardness is coming from, every surface water utility will benefit on the Red River. So I was very happy that we were able to forward all this data to the DNR, and we'll see where it goes. The discussions have just begun to see if the MPCA and other state agencies want to discuss this as a potential investigation on a statewide level. And just this morning, I received a phone call from the Minnesota Department of Health stating that they want Moorhead Public Service staff to be on a source water review panel to forward on as much data as we can to help them in this investigation. So things are moving in the right direction, and I am very hopeful that we'll be able to find this source. So that was a lot of data thrown at you. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. If you can't think of them right now, feel free to email or call based on my contact information above.
Heidi, do you have a question?
Well, kind of. Mark, have you been, and I'm hoping this is yes, have you been talking with Bob Zimmerman? Because I know the city has had to deal with MPCA issues regarding wastewater. And, the phosphorus levels, they had decreased, the allowable levels, and this seems to be overlapping. And I'm just wondering if you're having conversations with city staff regarding this.
At this point in time, I actually have not had any conversations with city staff on this matter. It's really a new development. We definitely can have them involved. With the phosphorus loading for the wastewater plant, it's a little bit different from what the chemistry parameters that the drinking water side of things look at. They are actually, part of the same water source, so they are all part of the same problem. So we can definitely incorporate them to see if they have any input or things that they can add to.
They just might have some insight, because I know we were targeted because as a source point for phosphorus. So if you guys are, looking at sources and trying to uncover where, I don't want to say where the problem is, but if you are trying to understand and get to the source, it seems like he'd be a good person to talk to, just to see what he can share with you and what he knows on the topic.
Yes, absolutely. I will definitely get in contact with him. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation, Mark. Really good stuff. Very interesting. I have a question with the root cause analysis, which I think is a great thing to do with any type of problem you have with anything in life. Do you know what the process is? You mentioned the DNR, but you know what and you don't have to make it a long answer, but what's the process for that root cause analysis?
That's an excellent question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I would imagine it would involve getting many state agencies and individuals involved with source water sampling at different points along the tributaries that collect at the headwaters of the Red River, as well as places even further upstream to see if there's any variation between them, to see if they can isolate an area for further study. But as far as how they actually go about that process, that's an excellent question. I actually don't know.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but like I said, it's almost like a lean thing, like a Kaizen, lean mastery or lean. So getting to the root cause, like I said, is a good thing. So thank you. Thanks for your work and thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? I have a question. Phone's not on. Okay. What's the environmental impact of increased chemical use in treating water?
The main increase would be in our sludge byproduct formation. We've talked a lot about sludge in the past few years. Right. It would increase our total output of sludge being formed. The nice thing about that, in a way, is we've been able to find that there are some contract haulers that work with area farmers to use it for things such as pH adjustment and optimizing things such as alfalfa growth. So it depends on how you look at things. I try to find the silver linings in everything. So I see it as increased use for potential farmers in the area if they would use it. But there are contract haulers that specialize in finding areas to add this material. So we've been in conversations with those folks, and we're working on putting a game plan together for when that sludge facility gets put online so we can have space to move the material. So.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Mark, is that a more cost-effective option than hauling it to the landfill like we had been discussing for a few years?
Yes, much.
Okay. Any idea on the total cost?
Not at this time. We would have to probably get some quotes back to know that for sure, but I do know that it would most likely be significantly less.
Mary, I see your microphone's unmuted. Do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Mark for this presentation, because I think water, is going to be an even greater topic in coming years. And I am very proud of the Moorhead water supply, and you guys have done a great job guarding it, protecting it, keeping track and recording. I appreciate that. So thank you, Mark, very much.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, could I ask one question?
Absolutely.
Thanks. I just was wondering if we could talk a little bit about climate and population, because obviously you mentioned we've been in an extended wet cycle, and we live in a region that tends to have these long cycles, and we are due for an extended dry cycle. And you mentioned the two big ones, the 1930s, and of course we had one in the 80s, but a dry cycle. But the big difference is that our population has increased substantially since then, and not just here, but in Fargo, which also draws from the red. So if you could just talk a little bit about how, in the predictive models for future consumption, what extent have they taken into account those population growth?
Sure. With increased population means increased usage. That those two pretty much go hand in hand. The nice thing that we've noticed since about 2010 is with the advent of more efficient water fixtures inside homes especially, our predicted increase in overall per capita day usage on the individual basis is really flatlined actually. We projected it to increase with population more so than it actually has, and our overall usage is almost a flat trend line. So we really haven't experienced a whole lot of excess volume being consumed. So from a sustainability perspective, we're in good shape there. If we were to ever be in a drought situation that would mandate, really looking hard at how much overall source water we're using, part of the Buffalo Aquifer Management Plan that we recently completed does tackle that very topic, and it has 4 different stages based on a ongoing maintained model that we have of the PDSI, which is a drought index that we can track over time. We basically have 4 stages based on overall precipitation, river levels, groundwater levels, and based on a combination of that data, we actually do have stages that recommend decreases in non-essential use to make sure that we don't get hit quite so hard by those dry times. So, good question.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Mark, thanks for that presentation. It was fabulous, very well done. I guess my question is related to the hardness. That seems to be the principal constituent that we remove, and that's where the majority of the costs are contained. Can you just explain, is hardness a function of the temperature of the water? And if so, you had mentioned at our last meeting that a majority of the potential degradation is as a result of non-point pollution sources, and potentially could be naturally induced as well due to temperature increase. And as we look into climate change and the increase of temperature on an average in our area, this seems to be of increasing concern that could potentially not have a mitigative method to deal with. And so it may be something that could be permanent and that we'll continue to deal with in the future. Could you maybe just make a few comments related to that?
Sure. As far as the hardness in the Red River goes, it's a function of a wide variety of things. It could be non-point source pollution constituents. Some of it is actually naturally occurring deposits within the ground itself that the groundwater passes through. There's a lot of variation based on location and the geography that groundwater passes through. In reference to temperature, the temperature itself doesn't really affect the hardness of the water. It affects what can trickle or precipitate to the Red River, and hence what we experience. In the wintertime when temperatures are cold, typically the Red River is iced up. We're not getting any kind of surface runoff that could pull those hardness constituents to the actual Red River where we treat. So it's not so much a direct function of the temperature, more so than the precipitation and the potential for surface runoff. And then, forgive me, what was the second half of your question there?
Just the fact that if we cannot identify the sources of the pollutant or the causes of the increase in hardness, this could be something that we deal with for a very long time in the future. And are we anticipating, adjusting our plans as necessary with the continuation of additional well field expansion to deal with the negative ramifications of river degradation?
Yes. As far as the long-term plan, one of the nice things about the surface water treatment plant in Moorhead is it utilizes an upflow clarifier system, which is jargon for a very compact footprint clarifying system that utilizes a floating sludge blanket to remove that hardness. So based on the temperature parameters, which affects viscosity of the water, you can alter the thickness and some of the chemical constituents of that floating sludge blanket to remove this hardness more effectively. It really depends on how much water we're treating at any given time. We do have the capacity to turn on 2 of these clarifier systems. So if we began to experience high hardness water on a consistent basis, we still have the means and methods to remove it effectively. It would potentially affect our maximum output from the plant, but the nice thing is we still have our old water treatment system, the old plant as we call it, that still has the capacity to treat water as well. So for the time being, we still have the means and methods available to remove this. I think we would be paying ourselves a very large dividend if we were to find the root cause of this change as soon as we can so that we can mitigate it before we really need to look at potential plant additions or very large capital projects.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And,
Thank you.
that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other questions for Mark? Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Love the slides.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mark.
if there's any other questions, feel free to email or call.
Okay, great,
Thanks.
thank you. I'll need a motion to accept or to approve the manager's report.
So moved.
Daily second.
Okay, a motion by Paulson, second by Daley to approve the manager's report. All in favor, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Manager's report has been approved. Item D, accept report on strategic direction for future power supply.
Sure.
Travis.
Sure, I'll talk to that. Thanks again, Mark, for your presentation on the Buffalo Aquifer and the Red River degradation issue that we've got going on in front of us. We're going to switch over to the electric division now, and we're going to talk about the future of power supply. I'm going to give a brief update, and then we've got Tom Heller, CEO of Missouri River Energy Services, online as well, and he's going to talk more about Missouri River and what they do for Moorhead and Moorhead Public Service. Quick update, we'll go through the history a little bit. Back in 1895, the city of Moorhead and Moorhead basically built a power plant to provide lighting within the city of Moorhead. That continued on at our power plant on Elm Street till about 1957, when we were able to get an allocation from Western Area Power Administration, which is the hydroelectric dams on the Missouri River. From 1957 to roughly 1976, we were utilizing 100% WAPA during that time frame. During about 1976 and then on, we had been capped at our allocation that we still have roughly the same today. So we needed to add additional resources. So again, we still had our power plant on Elm Street, but we also went into long-term contracts with Missouri River Energy Services, or what they're doing business as now today. Basically bringing that forward to present, roughly we are now about 50-50 between Missouri River and Western Area Power Administration with our allocation, or the allocation that we still have from WAPA. Everything additional that we supplement with Missouri River Energy Services. And we have 2 long-term contracts, one with WAPA and one with Missouri River Energy Services. WAPA, of course, their contract goes to 2040, and Missouri River's is 2057. Going forward, what's our future power supply going to look like is a very interesting crystal ball I wish I had. But we do, with Missouri River's help and with our allocations from WAPA, we do meet the Minnesota standard for 25% renewable by 2025. And there is a lot of question, there's a lot of things going on in Minnesota these days based on carbon-free, 100% carbon-free, or or 100% renewables. And there's a lot of question on whether that's even possible. And I've got some good attachments to the agenda that you can read through and to see if that's even feasible and doable. Currently, we're roughly about 87% carbon-free, which is a great thing. And along with that, we are about 55% of that is renewable, and that's through the hydroelectric, the wind and solar allocations that we've got. So what could Moorhead Public Service do more going into the future? I think a lot of what we're going to continue to do is more small, innovative ideas or projects similar to our wind turbines we have on site, and then we could do some more solar arrays as well. But if we're going to do anything larger, I think we're going to have to do this as a joint venture or in conjunction with Missouri River Energy Services. They've got the abilities to do that a lot more effectively than Moorhead. One, because we have purchase power contracts, and there's only so much generation that we can make on site. And Tom can talk or allude to that a little bit more later. The second side of that, too, is it's just a cost perspective side of things. It is very costly to do things just for Moorhead itself. So we'll have to be, careful of how we move forward, how we approach a lot of these renewables or carbon-free requests that we want to move towards. Again, we want to be good stewards of the environment, but we want to be able to provide our customers reliable power as well, too. Those are very main concerns that we have, and we want to continue with those moving forward. So, I think, again, the biggest thing we're going to want to work on is to work with Missouri River in any joint ventures or as part of a placement of a major infrastructure need for renewables or carbon-free generation. So from that, I'm going to have Tom Heller start speaking about Missouri River and what they're looking at doing from a wholesale power supplier side of things for Moorhead and the other members of Missouri River Energy Services. Tom? Tom, are you there? He's on. He's online. I just don't see. Tom, is your phone on mute? Oh, logged off. Well, while Tom is relogging in here, do you guys have any questions on future of power supply for Moorhead or items that you would like to discuss based on that?
Oh. Well, I guess I would say that I really enjoyed those articles that were attached to the agenda. especially the ones regarding coal.
And that's one thing that Missouri River is looking at doing is the ending the life of the Larryman River Station at some point in time in the future that they're working on. Tom, you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I apologize for that. We should have checked this out before the meeting. I was using computer audio and I switched it to my phone, so you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Well, again, I apologize for that. Chairman Thompson, members of the commission and city council, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. Travis had arranged for me to come to speak with you a few months ago, but with this COVID thing taking place, it's been kind of delayed. I appreciate being here today. I know you've had a long meeting so far. I'll be brief. I do want to talk a little bit about Morehead Public Service and your relationship with Missouri River Energy Services. A little background about us, the power supply agreements and the power supply that's in your portfolio right now and what we might be looking at for future power supply portfolio. So with that, I'm going to try to share with you my PowerPoint presentation, which was included in your mail out. So first of all, what is Missouri River Energy Services? You know, we're a joint action agency. We're municipal utilities like Morehead Public Service that have joined together to more economically provide power supply, transmission, service, and other services. We were specifically formed quite a few years ago for power supply, though, for economies of scale. You can see that we have now 61 members in 4 states. We're located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we're the first multi-state joint action agency formed in 1965, 61 members. All original members had WAPA hydropower. Currently, our operating budget's around $300 million. We're board of directors, 13 members. We meet monthly. As I said, offices in Sioux Falls. Now, one of the things Missouri River couldn't do when it was formed was finance, because we're nothing more than an Iowa entity, and we're a intergovernmental cooperation agreement between cities in 4 states. So when we looked at financing, the bond councils told us we're an interstate compact and we needed to get federal authority to finance. So with that, we went to our individual states to try to get some joint action agency legislation passed. Minnesota was the first. So the Minnesota members of Missouri River formed Western Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, and they are our financing agent. They sell bonds and finance our capital projects. They're formed in 1976. 24 members, currently about a little over $661 million in outstanding debt. Most recent project, Red Rock Hydro Project, which I'll talk about in a minute, a AA3 Moody's and AA minus Fitch bond ratings, one of the highest in the country for a joint action agency as ourselves. 7 board members, 4 of the largest members in Minnesota, which includes Morehead, and because of that, Travis automatically sits on our Western Minnesota board, and 3 others are elected. And we have an administrative services agreement. Western Minnesota services are all completed by Missouri River Energy. Now, the big thing that we have with Morehead Public Service is our power supply agreement that Travis has mentioned. It's an agreement that goes through 2057 between Morehead and all of our other members, Missouri River Energy and Western Minnesota. These agreements are security for the bonds that Western Minnesota sells. So when we financed the Red Rock Hydro Project for $400 million, the pledge from you as the city to buy power from us and your requirements over and above your WAPA allocation are the security on that debt. We also, with our agreement, allow members to generate, as Travis has said, 5% of their energy purchases from us. The WAPA hydropower allocations were what bound all of our members originally together. As Travis said, the WAPA power used to be your only power source up until about 1975. When we began supplying power over and above your hydropower allocations from WAPA. Moving on, at Missouri River, what are the things that we're working on right now? What are the big issues that are out there? Well, attracting and retaining employees. We've got quite a few retirements taking place. There's going to be a real need to keep people. Maintaining financial stability. Your rates, your wholesale power rates, I believe, are quite low with the low cost you have from WAPA. We do a comparison on our rates with other wholesale power agencies, and we're below what the average is. So we believe we're doing a good job there. The thing I want to spend time on this afternoon, just for a few minutes, though, is creating a clean energy future. And the two other items we have for our strategic issues are keeping up with new technology, helping you with AMI and our other members, and communicating the value of public power. That public power is so important to your community and the benefits that it has. Turning to power supply, what is your current power supply resource for all of our members? Well, you've got the WAPA hydropower on the Missouri River. We've also got the new hydropower facility on the Des Moines River that we're building. We do have some carbon-free nuclear power that we have a purchase power agreement from Xterra on its Point Beach power plant. We do not pay for any. The only thing we're paying for is purchase power. It's not a commitment to pay any decommissioning or anything. We have some wind projects in southern Minnesota and Iowa and up in Rugby. We have some diesel, which includes our generating plant in Watertown. Plus, there's 100 megawatts like the units in Moorhead that we have under contract to provide capacity, a small solar project in Pierre, and our biggest energy resource, the capability of producing energy, is the one coal plant that we have partnership with, Laramie River Station. There's 3 units. One of the units goes to the east, 2 go to the west. We're partners with Basin Electric, Tri-State, and Lincoln Electric, and we get about less than 20% of the 1,500 megawatts that come out of there. We've got a little less than 300 megawatts of capacity that come out of Laramie River Station. The one project that Travis, I think, has mentioned to you in the past is the one that we're currently completing after 14 years of permitting and 6 years of construction, is the Red Rock Hydro Project on the existing Red Rock Dam, just right outside of Pella, Iowa. It's an existing existing dam that was built by the Corps of Engineers for flood control, never with any hydropower on it. This is outside of the WAPA marketing area, so it was never built by Western Area Power. Project has got water going through it right now, and hopefully within the month we'll be testing, and there is going to be power generated from that resource. The good thing about this project, though, it's renewable energy. It's renewable energy. The Corps increases the lake level during the summer, lets the water out during the summer, and we get the generation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, most of it in the summertime when we need it. With all those power supply resources I mentioned, what is our energy resource? Well, back in 2005, we were about 50% carbon free. The Laramie River Station coal made up about almost half of all the energy that you got. And the other half of all of our members that was hydropower. Well, jump forward now to 2019. It's a little deceiving because this pie should probably be 40% larger than 2005 because we've grown. Several new members have been added. But right now, we're at about 40% hydro with all of our members on an average. 35% comes from the market. But look at the difference here between the coal, from about 50% down to less than 15%. Quite a substantial difference. So we're from 50% up to 84% carbon free. And we consider power coming from the market as carbon free because we take responsibility for all of our emissions. We believe others should as well. So what is Moorhead's specific picture? And I think Travis has shared this with you before. You are 87% carbon free, 55% renewable. That's because you've got such a great hydropower allocation from WAPA. You've got one of the biggest hydropower allocations of all of our members. Total-wise, you are probably about the 3rd largest member of Missouri River Energy Services. Well, what's happening nationally? Well, you can see what's happened to coal. Coal peaked out about 2008, and ever since has been going down because of a couple of reasons. Number one, the cheap natural gas that's coming out of Bakken and other places. Natural gas is so cheap that it's economically driving coal plants out of business. And you can see what's happened with renewable energy. It's making a bit of an increase, but coal is going down all over. It's just too costly. It's so costly to generate compared to natural gas right now. And a lot of plants are being retired. Before we talk about future power supply, though, I know this is getting into the weeds a bit, but it'll just take me a second to mention there's regional transmission organizations. And if you can remember the footprint, we are right here. We have to buy power and sell power in the Mid-Continent ISO and buy power and sell power in the Southwest Power Pool. We are in 2 markets, and there's no transmission that we have between the two. So the generating facilities we have at SPP serve our SPP members. The generating facilities in MISO serve those members. However, your costs are all shared mutually. So we're paying, and they're pretty close. They're shared by all members. So with that, you can see SPP is about half our load. Moorhead is directly connected to WAPA. That's why you're in the SPP market. Most of Minnesota is in MISO, most of South Dakota and Iowa, other than Pella here, which is where the Red Rock plant is, and Hutchinson is they're out of the WAPA footprint area. They're in MISO. So switching gears then to what are we looking at for future power supply options? And I think this is what Travis wanted us to talk about. You know, right now we're in two markets. We've got the coal plant, which is 40 years old. It has a contract to go through 2040. I don't believe it'll last that long. Right now, you know, the capacity factor on the east unit, the reason that we're down to 14% total power supply is that plant is only running about 20-25% of the time, and that's during the summer because it's cheaper to buy power on the market and let it sit there and idle. However, it has value and capacity. But when we retire those units, what are we looking at doing? We're looking at a study right now and replacing with wind and solar to provide energy, and even looking at some battery storage. It's very expensive yet. We probably will, in the near term, be looking at possibly another natural gas unit to build in SPP in South Dakota, North Dakota, and in that market for capacity, but it probably won't run that much. Another capacity resource we're looking at, and I see Travis had that in your packet, is the Gregory County Pump Storage Project. Well, that's nothing more than a big battery. It pumps water out of the Missouri River up a 700-foot bluff in South Dakota, puts it in a pond. It pumps the water when basically the wind is blowing. You take renewable energy, you power the pumps, you put water up the hill, and when wind's not blowing, you let it down and you go through those pumps and they generate electricity. We've got a couple of other large utilities that are talking with us about partnering. It's way too big for us to do ourselves, so we're hoping we can get some partners. It's an expensive project, will take a long time, but projects like this are going to be needed in the future to keep the lights on. Wind and solar isn't going to be able to do it themselves. When they talk about 100% renewable or 100% clean energy standard, without the use of nuclear, without the use of pump storage and hydro, we just aren't going to get there because we're not going to be able to keep the lights on. So with that, I'm going to pause and ask if we've got some other, I've got a couple of other slides to talk about the services we provide, but recognizing it's close to 6 o'clock already, I think this is the area that, Travis, I think you wanted to spend some time to find out if there's any questions.
Correct. I open up for the board to ask any questions.
One of the things that we are looking at with solar and wind, and specifically solar, is building solar in member communities. And Moorhead, Watertown, and Brookings are our three largest members in the SPP footprint. And I've talked to Travis about this actually this morning. We're studying the potential of putting solar in Moorhead. It would be behind your wholesale meter, probably about 10, maybe 20 megawatts in each of those communities to provide energy supply for all of our members. It would be paid for by everybody, but it would be a resource that would be located, and connected directly to the Moorhead distribution system. That's just under study right now, but we think that there's great potential for that.
Tom, one question. What's the footprint for roughly 5 to 10 megawatts of load in Moorhead?
Well, about 1 megawatt takes about 5 acres of solar. So if you put 10 megawatts in, you're talking 10 times that. You're talking about a 50 megawatt footprint, or a 50 acre footprint, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And they don't have to all be at the same place, but that's the total size that it would require.
I have a question real quick. This is Chuck. So how many, and thank you for being here, but how many homes would that power?
what are you talking about now? The 10 megawatts?
Yeah.
Oh, let me think. Well, I got to try to do some math in my head right now.
Well, that's
We've got
take your time.
our Red Rock hydro facility, which we're going to be producing energy from. It's about 40 megawatts. That's going to supply about 18,000 homes. And if we were to put in 10 megawatts, it'd be a fourth of that. That's 4,000 homes. The capacity factor coming out of solar is less than what the hydro is going to be. So you're probably talking a couple thousand houses. It could power all of those for 2,000-3,000 homes anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
This is Heidi. I have a quick question. And you said you're looking in Moorhead at potentially, it's just preliminary now, but did you say 50 megawatts?
Well, 50 would be what we're probably looking at building in all the facilities,
Okay.
all three, 4, 5 communities. We've got to work with our engineers need to work with Travis and your power supply people to determine where could we effectively connect to your distribution system, and there may be limitations there.
Okay.
So, maybe 5 megawatts, maybe 10 megawatts.
Okay.
I don't think we would not be putting the whole 50 in Moorhead.
Okay. And so 50 megawatts is 50 acres that is divided amongst different sites and different municipalities. How do you acquire that property? Is that property on utility land? Is it property that you have to buy, or how do you acquire that acreage?
I went through the numbers fast. If we did 10 megawatts, that would be 50 acres.
Okay.
We would probably go, I'm a little familiar with Moorhead, let's say up in your north area where you've got your wind turbines, your existing solar right now. We'd probably try to work with a local farmer who would be willing to sell,
Okay.
50, 60 acres and buy it.
Okay.
Western Minnesota would buy the property unless you've got, some property that that you have that we could rent from you or we could use. That'll be part of the study that we're doing to see if there is some of that. And if we could maybe only do 3, 4, 5 megawatts and you have the property, that would be the most economical way to do it.
Okay. So, yeah, okay. So possible rent, possible purchase. Okay.
Yep.
That's intriguing. Thank you. And thank you for being here.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Sure, go.
Thanks, Tom, for being here and great presentation. I guess my question is more related to the financing of projects for Missouri River, and obviously through Western Minnesota Municipal Power Agency. So you had mentioned prior that the bonding capacity is related to the electrical purchase agreements of the member entities as a whole, I'm assuming. Do you monitor, and I'm assuming you do, what your current debt service is in relation to your total bonding capacity, and would you be able to express, the amount of potential for future projects related to your total bonding capacity?
Well, I can try to address it. We do obviously follow, what our bonding capacity is, and the rating agencies are the ones that follow it very closely because they continually watch they watch Missouri River and Western Minnesota's financial strength. And they also look through us, they look to Moorhead, and they look to our other members to see how well financially they're doing as well. So, you are part of our bond rating.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a projects that we're looking at financing, one of the options is for us to sell bonds. Now, with renewable projects, a lot of the wind projects that we have undertaken, we do not own. We allow private developers to own them so they get the tax credits because we are a municipal entity. Western Minnesota is a municipal joint action agency in Minnesota. Those are tax exempt bonds we sell. So we don't get the tax credits. The tax credits are worth more than the value of the tax-exempt bonds. So the last few wind projects we've done, we've been able to more cost-effectively have a private developer install the project, and we just enter a purchase power agreement with them rather than actually selling the bonds. And that would be something we would be looking at as well when we're looking at developing future projects and solar projects.
Oh, excellent. Thank you for that information, Tom. I appreciate it.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the possibility of siting a larger solar project in Moorhead. And I know, what we've done so far is on a much smaller scale, but was very well received. And then we've maxed out on the space that we currently have. But I know there's been discussion about perhaps pursuing other places in Moorhead for us to expand and maybe even do a partnership. I know there was talk of perhaps along I-94 and maybe working with some of the private companies there to use some of their land. If this larger project were to be located in Moorhead, would that be in lieu of us doing something to expand on the work we've been doing, or could both projects move forward?
I think they both could move forward. In fact, I spoke with the Brookings Municipal Commission just last week, and they had kind of the same question. They're looking at what you've done with your solar project, your solar farm, where you've sold subscriptions with your wind to others, and Detroit Lakes has done it, Barnesville has done it. Brookings is interested, if we were to locate a facility there, to take part of that and own it themselves, and take that and do what you've just done. So we'd be open for a joint partnership where you could do some of it and we would do the majority. I hope that answers your question, but yes, we would.
That was great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Heller? Is this, do we have more presentation, or?
Tom, do you got a few more slides you wanted to go through, or?
I had a couple more that just the services that we provide, and the only one that I'm going to talk about, I think makes some sense is the Bright Energy Choices program that we offer. If your retail customers want to be 100% clean, 100% carbon free, they can buy through you and us green energy credits, so that we make sure that they're getting renewable energy for 100% of their power supply. And I'm sure that Dennis and Travis have talked to you about that before, and that's something that we're very excited about working on in the future as well. So that was the only other one in the list of services that I had planned to cover. I mean, with that, I recognize that you are, we're past 6 o'clock already. I just want Chair Thompson and members of the commission, thank you for the time that I've been able to spend and talk with you. And I do have a history with Moorhead. I graduated from North Dakota State University and got a part-time job working at Moorhead Public Service Commission, and turned into a full-time job and turned into being general manager there for a while. So I owe a deep, deep amount of gratitude to the city of Moorhead for allowing me to start my career with you. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Tom. Are there any additional questions for him? Well, I guess that's great, and we appreciate your coming out and sticking through the first part of our meeting with us, and glad to have a chance to hear what you had to say. I found it very enlightening.
Well, hopefully the next time I can do this in person.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I'm looking for a motion to accept the report.
Yeah, I'll move approve.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion by Duran, seconded by Paulson, to accept the report on strategic direction for future power supply. Discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, we've accepted the report. Items 9 and 10 are on the consent. There is no closed meeting today. And so we're entertaining a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We need
I'll
a-
second.
Okay, thank you. So meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.